Welcome to the Making Math Moments That Matter podcast. I'm Kyle Pierce.
And I'm Jon Orr. We're from MakeMathMoments.com, and together
with you, the community of math moment makers worldwide who want to build and deliver problem-based math lessons that spark curiosity,
fuel sense-making,
and ignite your teacher moves. Welcome, math moment makers everywhere, to this next episode of the podcast.
It's a special one.
Yes, it is absolutely special. It's actually going to be cross-posted, meaning like we've actually taken this episode from another podcast. It's a brand new podcast, not specifically about math education, but math is always involved in it. It's a new podcast with our colleague and friend, Matt Biggley. He's a former history teacher and guidance counselor who used to work at one of the schools I worked at. And he's my investing partner. And actually, Jon has done some investments with us as well. He's now a realtor in Windsor, Essex County. And we're going to be sharing an episode that we thought was perfect for the Math Moment Maker community, because it's all about teaching kids and students about financial literacy, money, and how they can use it as a tool for good in their own lives.
Yeah, and we're excited. And if you have not yet heard the podcast or listened to our newest podcast, it's called Invested Teacher, which is a podcast aimed at helping all teachers, nurses, people who
doctors,
just
scientists.
pretty much anyone. We call them we call these people like us, these kind of golden handcuffed kind of people who have, built careers and have, pensions, and we help educate, people on how they can build their wealth, how we've built our wealth over the course of the number of years, and how what are the lessons, what are the tips, what are the strategies that we can do that, what are the mindsets we can do that with you. And so we talk about that on that episode. It's running live. We are also running it as a weekly podcast, just like we're running this one. And don't worry, we're not stopping this podcast. We're just running two at the same time. And those episodes air on Wednesdays. So if you have not yet subscribed to the Invested Teacher podcast, you can go to wherever you subscribe to this one and search Invested Teacher. It's there, and just hit subscribe. And you can go back and listen to some of the early episodes we've had. We are just getting underway here in the new year on that one, but we are going to continue to roll out new episodes weekly there. That's the Invested Teacher podcast. And Kyle's right. In this episode we're sharing with you right now is perfect for you, because it's about how do we help our students think financially about their own money, but also how do we help our own children think about their money and how their relationship with money exists. So we think it's perfect for you, and also perfect if you want to continue your learning on your financial wealth building. Join us over at Invested Teacher as well. So let's get ready to it. Let's get right to it, Kyle. And here we go.
Here it is.
This episode, we are excited because we're going to talk all things financial literacy, financial education, not just for ourselves, but for our own children, for students in schools. We want to dive in here, especially I'm super interested in hearing your opinions, gentlemen, and also the community's opinions on how do you talk money, how do you talk financial future with your own kids or with kids in general? Like, what kind of education can we help them with? What are some of the mindsets that we can help our own children with? Thinking about our own financial paths and our own hangups. What can we do? What are some of the practical things like we can do, like thinking about allowance versus paying it maybe in a different format? How do we help kids understand the value of money and like things cost money? I know that those are some big questions I want to talk about here, guys. Let's get into it. Let's go.
I love it. Yeah. One big thing that makes this really challenging is that I think most adults struggle with the idea of money, right? Like, even if you've got sort of a budget under control, you know, we've talked about budgeting, we've talked about all these things, like maybe things are working well for you, but you're wondering, like, how do I actually teach young children, whether it be your own kids, or if you're teachers like we either were or are in this case, you know, how do we help communicate that to students that we work with as well? So this one's a really tough one. And I want to dig right into this thing, because money for kids is actually pretty abstract, right? Like when they're young, especially, they just sort of think, you know, you just have stuff, and every now and again, you know, they experience the transaction when you go to a store, but they're not really like equating, what does that money really mean? Where did it come from? Like, did they just dig it up in the backyard? Like, where is this stuff? And ultimately, even some adults, I've only now started thinking about, when I'm buying something, I try to think about, like, how much work did I have to do in order to obtain that money? Like, oftentimes you just look in your bank account and you've been working and all of those things, and you just sort of ride with it, right? And you just sort of roll with things. But now I'm starting to look at things and go, you know, I had to actually give up X number of hours of my life in order to make that particular purchase. And when you start thinking of money that way, things get a little bit interesting. How about you there, Matt? Like, where's your head at when you're thinking about money, when you're thinking about your two daughters and the students that you've worked with? What comes to mind for you?
Yeah, this is such an interesting topic. You guys are math teachers. I know you're going to share some really fun tactical things. And, you know, I'm such a big mindset person. And it's exactly what you just said about kids and money. Money is actually neutral. Money has no meaning, good or bad. Yet as adults, or even as children, we're teaching our children to apply meaning to it, you know, and this topic is just so deeply uncomfortable for so many people. We have such strong moral judgments about money and about wealth, you know, and so I go back and reflect as I think about my own kids. And listen, admittedly, I'm looking to you guys today for some ideas on maybe how to practically do this, because, you know, as we reflect back on how we perceived money as kids, you know, in my own personal experience, I remember being scared of money, of being fearful that there wasn't enough money, you know, and not really understanding what it meant to have money or to make money, or, you know, it felt like other people had more money. And so, you know, I grew up, whether it was, you know, just through my experience of childhood, of actually really fearing it and not really understanding how to take, you know, control of it, and not understanding how to make a lot of it. And even as a teacher, it's so fascinating. I think that as teachers, you know, if I can stereotype the profession, I think by and large, we're pretty fiscally conservative people. And I've gone through this, you know, change from being a full-time teacher to being a full-time realtor. So from having a salary job to being an entrepreneur. And I've just had to undergo this massive mindset shift about how I view money, about how I view the making of money. And it's I've gone through this exploration of all of these fears and assumptions, and, you know, and the moralizing that happens around wealth building. And it's been really fascinating. And I'll tell you, it's been at times an emotional journey, because you're like revisiting like the things that you have believed for so long, or been taught or learned. And that's a deeply personal experience, but one that I think on the other side of it has allowed me to see money in an abundant way, rather than in a way that I fear it. And I think I feel almost like freed from the chains of needing to be scared of money. And that's come in my 40s. That's come, you know, so far into life. So to bring this back full circle for my own kids, you know, I'm really searching and looking for tactical ways and practical ways to teach them this mindset that I've only now just, you know, recently learned in the past, you know, I'm going to say 24 months.
Matt, I know that you said this was a personal experience, and I'm kind of going through that mindset experience for everyone is a personal experience, but what would you say is like an example of this abundance switch that you came across, where it helped your mindset change from being fearful of money to thinking about money maybe as a tool or something?
Yeah, let's visit some of the moralizing that we do about money. Like, for some reason, it is, a common cultural assumption that, wealth equals greed, that, to make money equals stress. And like, if we unpack that, like, say, take this common assumption, like money can't buy you happiness. Well, then if we unpack that, we say like, well, what does make you happy? And you start to think about those things: taking my kids on a vacation, getting my wife something that she loves for her birthday, having a nice dinner out, or a trip. So then you say, well, I guess, does money actually help me achieve those things? And yes, it does. So then money actually helps support my happiness. So we've just deconstructed this idea that money can't buy happiness. And in fact, money can help support your happiness. And I think there's, myriad examples of when we kind of deconstruct our assumptions about money, where we can move from that sort of scarcity to that, that abundance mindset. I've talked about one of my favorite books around this topic before. It's called You're a Badass at Making Money. And it is a psychological exploration of your own internal thought process and assumptions and mindsets around wealth. And it must be confusing for kids as they look out into, culture and what they're consuming, and really have no way of making sense about, wealth, or about what that money means, or what they're seeing and viewing, how they achieve that or don't achieve that. I think it's even gotten so much more confusing with, the TikTok that I'll catch my kids watching, and the YouTube stuff, and I don't think it's teaching them about money abundance. Maybe it's about, coveting money, or about, wanting material things, without connecting that to this deeper idea of connecting that to your happiness and your experiences, and what that could mean. This is heavy, guys. This is heavy stuff.
Totally. Matt, like you, so many things you said there, I connected with. And, going back to this idea that, money can't buy you happiness is like that expression. You hear it all the time. And it is true in so many ways, but it is not the whole story, is what I just heard you say, right? Like, it's like, of course, you could have $1 billion and be the most sad, depressed person in the world, but that's because you don't have the other pieces to the puzzle, right? It's like, if you can figure out what does help you feel happy, what does, sort of make you excited to get up in the morning, which is different for everyone. I think that's the part that's really hard, is like trying to figure out, what do you like doing? Like, what do you want to spend your time doing? And how do you like living your life? That's the hard work that has to be done. But even when you do all of that work, I'm going to argue that when you don't have any money, it makes it hard for you to be able to do those things. And I heard you say that. So I've just sort of restated that piece. And I think that's really important for everyone. And, going to this idea of abundance mindset and, versus scarcity mindset, I'm thinking, as an educator, and I'm thinking about how we assess students and how we evaluate students, in our grade books and things like that. And, we're often talking about asset-based comments versus deficit-based comments. So, what that really means is, like, we want to talk about the things students do know how to do, and then, like, what's the next step to get them to the next level? Like, that's a great way to look at things, versus saying, like, all the things they can't do and never referencing the things they can do. And I agree with that. I think that's great. I really do. But then when we look at it on the other hand, and you coming most recently out of a guidance position, you were a guidance counselor, Matt. I feel like the messaging that we give to students, whether we say it explicitly or whether it's just modeled for students and they kind of connect the dots, is like almost this scarcity mindset around, getting a job or having a career, or, if you don't do this, then you won't get that. Like, everything is in the negative, which is the opposite of that asset-based thinking. And it just makes me feel, or wonder anyway, about how many students are coming out of school. And I'll be honest and say, I don't know if it was school that did this, or I've just, sort of grown up with this mindset myself. But I know that for me, it's like, I wanted that security. I know, Matt, you're that guy too. Like you and John, you're, you talked about on one of the earlier episodes, your dad being a teacher, and you sort of being like, listen, if I could just do that, then everything's going to be okay. And again, it doesn't make us wrong. It doesn't make anyone bad for doing those things. But when you start to think outside of that box, you start to realize that maybe there's more to life, to this world than maybe we had realized. That like, it's not just about, securing that job and making sure the paycheck's coming in, and that, that's one thing that will help you sleep at night. But then, is it helping you to achieve the things that you want in life? Have you thought about the things that you truly want in life? Or are you like so many people that look and say, well, in 30 years, like on day one of work, in 30 years, I hope that I'll get to travel, or in, 10 more years, I'll get a chance to not have to wake up at, 5:30 in the morning and, roll out of bed and go do whatever it is that I do every day. Like, there's so much here that I think is really important for us to be thinking about as parents of young people. But then if you're an educator out there and you're listening to this, we're working with students each and every day, and the things we say, and more importantly, the things we do, students are watching. Our children are watching us, whether we say it or not. And that has an implication on, what they interpret from the way we lead our own lives.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing, I think both of you saying is that, and especially if we think about what you just said, Kyle, about being, a teacher and thinking about security, and is I think a lot of us, especially teachers, and other, other kids, other students, and especially teachers who try to help kids think about their futures. I think we set this kind of standard, this like gold standard, that the way to be financially secure in your life is to go get a good job, and they're going to work there for 30 years. And, if you pick the right job, you're going to get this pension. Then you don't have to think about your money ever again. And kind of like setting yourself up that way. Like, I know I know I've experienced that as my mindset. We talked about it here. But I think as educators, I think we also kind of try to share that mindset with our students, which is not the norm. I don't think us being educators is the norm for the rest of our society on how many jobs people usually have in their lifetime or careers. Hey, we're going to have to fact check this later, but I think like the average, maybe Matt being a guidance counselor knows this, but it's like, the fact that the average person is going to go through like 5 or 4 different careers in their lifetime, whereas us educators, especially here in Ontario, I feel like we've talked about those golden handcuffs, that once we get our job and we teach and we get our pension and we're working towards that kind of retirement, we have one career. I know that that's been my experience, and most of the educators I work with, that's their experience. And it's like, how do we help kids understand that that's not the norm, and that we are going to think about, these financial futures? And I think what I was hearing you guys say is that if we can help students and our own kids understand that that's not necessarily the norm, but they can use money and the money they make from these jobs, careers, as a tool to help them with their happiness and what they want to do with their life, instead of thinking that that this money is like my be all end all so that I can live my life, in the future, which is, I think, what my mindset was when we started, but thinking about how can I use it now to build the life that I want. How I want to imagine the life that I want to live, and how can I, earn the money or use the money as a tool to create that for myself.
I love it. I love it. And, when I think about this, and it really boils down to, I read a book recently. It's on our book list over at investedteacher.com/books. It's called Becoming Your Own Banker. And the author of that book, it's all about something called the infinite banking process, or the infinite banking concept. And it's something I've dug into a lot. So definitely something worth looking into. We will have an episode coming up about that in when people are ready for it, I'll say. say. But in this book, Nelson Nash says that you're either earning interest on your money or you're paying someone else interest or losing the opportunity to earn interest by giving it to someone else. And when you really think about that, that's really what this is all about. And whether it's career, like when you think about your career, I think sometimes we are like, you need to find something that you're going to love doing every single day. Well, in reality, you know what? I mean, my kids are a perfect example of this with sports. Like my son didn't want to play any sports at first. It was only once he started to learn how to play the sport and when he became better getting skills in that sport that he actually enjoyed it. And I wonder about like our messaging for students when they're going out into the workforce. Like if you, I don't know about you, but like being an insurance agent doesn't sound fun. It doesn't sound exciting. But I wonder though, if you became a really effective at what you did and you start to treat it like a competition. You'll start to treat it like a bit of a game. Like it changes your mindset about things. So once you start getting out there and you're earning this stuff, this money, we now have to I want to turn our attention to kind of looking at it and going, okay, it's a tool. I heard Matt say this. I heard Jon, you just said it. It's a tool that really we can either use it as a tool to help us earn more of it. So we can use it as a tool for earning more money by buying assets, things that appreciate, cash flow, those sorts of things. Or we can use it as a tool to help someone else earn money. All right. So I want people to kind of think about that. There's really only two things you could do. You could hoard it and you can put it under your mattress. You could bury it in the backyard, but it's not that helpful. And actually it loses value over time. That thing called inflation is just eating away at the value. So really money, you want to have enough of it so that you can live, so that you're comfortable, so that you have, a way out of an emergency situation. But for the other money that you are earning or accumulating over time, it's like every single dollar you receive, you essentially have to make a choice. You have to make a choice. Am I going to spend it on something that's going to make me more money? Or am I going to spend it on something and help someone else make more money? And that is really what we need our students, our children, to better understand. And I think the real thing, the real idea is, well, wait a second, how do I earn money? And there's this magic thing, the seventh wonder, is it the eighth wonder of the world, that Einstein called compound interest. And this idea is something that we as adults, few adults actually understand it, because in the real world, it sort of happens slowly over time. So it's not as obvious, and you have to be very patient for it. But the reality is that if we can take money and we can apply doesn't have to actually be interest, but it's the theory of compound interest to grow money into more money, we will see a huge benefit in the long run.
The fact that you've just brought up compound interest is, I think, when you said the ninth wonder of the world, I think it's so important. And
how many wonders are there in the world, by the way?
I thought it was seven.
I was seven,
but maybe there's eight.
The ninth, I don't know. But anyway, it's the extra wonder, right?
Yeah, it's totally the extra wonder. And when we think about compounding, helping kids understand compound interest, I think as early as possible is a huge win, right? I think when we talk about money with our own kids or with students, we talk about budgeting, we talk about savings, and I think if we can help understand compound interest as a way to help build your own wealth and student wealth, I think we can do, that is a huge win for us. And I think we've got some practical ways here in this episode. We want to chat about how to help your own kids and students understand the power of compound interest for sure. But, just as an example of one of those powers of compound interest, Kyle, I know that you've got a couple lessons that you've done with students that are powerful to understanding them. But even just one example is, I think I remember hearing the story of of Warren Buffett, and Warren Buffett being one of the richest, people in the world, one of the most successful investors in the world. And I think he was like on record of basically saying, or it's been, shown that it's not the fact that he was like a great chooser of companies or like a great deal maker, even though these are all true. It's the fact that he's got so much money now because he started so early in his life on building on the power of compound interest. Like, I think he's like, what do you guys might know? Like, he's like 90 years old.
I think he's like 98 or something.
Yeah,
now. He's like up there.
Right. And he's still, working with the power of compound interest, but because he started so young, it's had time to build on top of building on top of building. And people are like, well, how can we be as rich as Warren Buffett? And some of the answers are, you just have to live that long. You just have to live that long and build on the power of compound interest. So one of the big ideas I think we want to share is, how can we share the idea and the power of compound interest to our own kids and our own students as early as we can? Like, for example, this brings up the idea of like allowance. Like, how do I help my own kids understand the power of compound interest? Is allowance and giving them so much money every week, as I, got when I was young, as so much money every week is your allowance. Is that helping them understand the power of compound interest? Like, are we helping them understand that if I'm giving them this number every single week? Now, that's linear growth. How can we structure that to help them understand the power of compound interest? But we'll go into that in just a sec. Kyle, do you want to chat about some of the examples of compound interest so that we all understand the compound interest as we've used them in the classroom?
Yeah, for sure. Because I was just going to say, I'm like, we could dive into this. And if you're, like Jon and I, math teachers, compound interest does come up in the curriculum. And the problem, though, is like when I used to introduce it, I introduced it from a very abstract perspective. Like, it was like, well, compound interest, we'd take down the definition of like compound interest is an exponential function. And, that means that you're going to raise the base to an exponent, all of these things that actually, are interesting to come out eventually after you understand the concept. But the reality is, it's this idea that you're going to earn on what you've already earned. So, one of my earliest colleagues and mentors as a math teacher and still a great friend is Dave Bracken. He taught at my first high school. Matt, you might know Dave from Greater Essex when we all taught together there. And Dave had shared this example of the wheat and chessboard problem. We'll put the link in the show notes for those who have never heard it. But, I think it's back in the 1200s was the first time this story or this idea was referenced, where basically it was about, it was about a king and a gambler. And basically, they made like a bet, of, hey, if you just give me and I think it was a grain of wheat, one grain, but you double that grain each day, and it was on a chessboard. There's a big story behind it. You can read about it. And what Dave did is he actually took this concept and he applied it in a way that would be more meaningful to students. So what he would offer students just verbally was he would say, listen, he'd make up this big story. He would say, hey, I talked to your parents last night, maybe pick a student in the class. I talked to your parent, and your parent had said, like, if you do chores every single day this month, maybe you made up, put the dishes away or made your bed, whatever it was. It's like, I will give you one of two options. And he would ask the students and say, you could have either $10,000 right now. I will give you $10,000. You have to commit to doing the full 30 days, a whole month. We'll use a 30-day month, full 30 days of doing those chores. Or I will give you the other option. The other option is I will give you 1 penny on the first day. On the second day, I will give you that penny doubled. And on the third day, I will then double that, that amount, which is, how many? And students would say, oh, it's 4 pennies. Okay. And on the next day, what would that be?
Sounds so awesome.
Yeah. Like, it doesn't sound great at all. You're like, so right away, a lot of kids are just saying like, give me the 10,000, and I'm going to walk. And like, dare I actually show you the power? And I think when students see the power of compound interest, those who are hanging out with us on YouTube will have the pleasure of checking this out. But if I take this like 1 penny and I go, okay, well, I'm going to take like that 1 penny And I'm going to take that penny and I'm going to add, and I'm going to double it here. Whoops. So we're going to take that penny and I'm going to double it. And we're going to like double it and add the original penny. Here we go. Let's see what happens here. Ooh, that's not right. I don't want to do that, right?
On the fly, he is crushing a spreadsheet.
Okay, here we go. All right, I've got my spreadsheet rocking on the fly. So, we see day 0, we'll say like today, and you get a penny. Matt, I know you're not a math teacher, so I want to make sure, like, are you good? Like, you seeing this? You're like, whoa, penny a day, double.
Show me the numbers.
On day 4, you get 16 cents.
All right, so we're on, day 4, 16 cents. Like, we make it to day 10 and you're like, I'm at $2. Like $2. These kids are like, whoa, this sucks. Like, some of the kids who were like, I think you're tricking me, sir. I'm going to pick the penny a day doubled. They're starting to lose confidence.
What do you think day 30 is going to look like?
Yeah, like take an estimate here. Like,
I'm
how much
at the
money?
Spreadsheet are those numbers correct?
Oh, something went wrong, didn't it?
From day 16 to day.
Why did this turn into $1? Let's see.
I don't know. Oh man, we're gonna.
That's weird.
We have to fix this.
Okay. Why did that happen? Okay, let's do this. Oh yeah, it's even worse.
There we go.
That looks better. That looks
something
better.
weird.
That's correct. Day 10 is $10.
Okay, $10 on day 10.
That makes sense.
Whew. All right. So Matt, what do you think? Like, if you had to just estimate, and this isn't to make you feel
what's day
bad.
30,
like, most
Matt?
people come like so far, like they're nowhere near where it's going to be. But
give us a number on day 30. It's got to be more than what? It's got to be more than what? What do you think? Give me a low ball. It's got to be more than
like $100.
All right. What's got to be less than how much though, Matt? Like, give us a guess. Just it's got to be less than. Like it's too. It couldn't possibly be blank amount of dollars, Matt.
It couldn't be 1,000. It couldn't.
All right. It couldn't be 1,000. All right.
Well, let's keep going. Let's get to day 15. So day 15, we're at $327. All right. On day 16, we're getting close to your 1,000. I'm going to let you adjust from here. Oh my gosh, we're at 2,000, 2,600 on day 18. Go ahead, adjust. And by the way, for those who are listening, this is sort of how Jon and I run our math classrooms. It's all about estimation. It's all about curiosity. It's all about like getting kids to lean in and go like, oh my gosh, numbers aren't that scary. They actually are kind of interesting, especially when there's a $sign in front of them.
Day 19.
Yeah, go for it here, Matt. I'm going to give you all the way to day 20. Look at day 20, 10,000 on day 20.
We're going to hit 100,000 at day 30. We're going to hit 100,000.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so we're
go
at
to 25.
And I want everybody
to
to pause their podcast for a second before I reveal here and like make your estimate. Day 20, we're at 10,000. What do you think? Like day 30 is going to be $10,737,418. And that's just like, I want you to think about this, guys. That is just what they're going to get on day 30. Because the day before they got 5 million. The day before that, they got 2 million, 2.6 million. The day before that, they got 1.3 million. Like, we didn't even add them all together. Like, that was just what I'm going to give you on day 30. So you were already a millionaire on like day 26 because, you add up the previous few days and like you're already over $1 million. And this is like the power of compound interest. Now, this is also
you're doubling. That's a doubling.
We are doubling. Like that means that you are making 200% on your investment. So it's not a realistic, expectation in any market, especially in 30 days. But the problem with compound interest, we believe, is that it happens like Warren Buffett's 98. It's like it happens over such a long period of time that
once it gets going,
are very impatient. And not only that, the longer we stretch something out, the harder it is to recognize a pattern. So I want to flip it over to Matt, and I'm wondering, like, where's your head at after you see this experiment? Like, what are you thinking? Like, what does it tell you about compound interest? And, what do you think, like, what's the implications for maybe kids? Like, what does this mean for kids?
Yeah, first of all, I'm trying to find the link to sign up to partner with you guys, to get these kind of returns.
No promises, no promises.
Let's drop that in the show
That's the
notes.
math in the real world.
This makes me think about, how often in school we can maybe teach a concept to students, and then that important part of like making it real. Like we've got so many students graduating from high school, taking those calculus classes, those functions classes, but maybe not. And listen, I was not a math. I was a history teacher before being a guidance counselor. I've learned so much about finances and money, post my education. This makes me just go, okay, like help me relate this to real life. Like help me make this really practical, because, I think so often we teach a concept and then we kind of forget to relate it to what it looks like in life. So we've got some numbers that are absolutely mind-blowing and really exciting. Like I'm getting all stirred up here. I'm like, I want to do that. I want to do that. And so I wonder in your classrooms and for your students, like, how do we then make that real for them in a way that they can, really comprehend and appreciate and really get this? Because I think that's super exciting. And I love that you guys talked about putting the dollar figure in front of it. Like otherwise numbers are just kind of meaningless, and you start throwing those kind of dollar figures around, excuse me, and it gets my blood flowing. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah. I putting the dollar sign in front does help out a lot. I've done the activity where if you take a sheet of paper, so this is the exact same kind of pattern. It's a doubling pattern, but if you take a sheet of paper and you fold it in half, you've doubled the thickness of the paper. Just a normal sheet of paper, fold it in half, and then another fold in half, you've doubled that thickness. And then if you keep folding it in half, you keep doubling the thickness. And if you've ever tried folding a standard 8x11 sheet of paper, you can probably only fold it, maybe like 6 to 7 times before it's too thick. All of a sudden it's that thick after a 6 fold. And if you keep extending that pattern with students, you can basically show that after I think 30 folds, it's even after like
the moon
15,
or something.
15 folds, the paper, if theoretically you could keep doubling the paper size, the paper thickness, it would be to the reach of the moon, and then it's like to the outer edges of the atmosphere at like 50 folds. So just 50 compounding periods, it's doubled. But the dollar amount, I think, like what you were saying, Matt, does kind of hit students a little bit more to their hearts and to their pocketbooks, in thinking about their own money, which brings us to thinking about our own kids and how do we help our kids think about and compound interest and bring that into their lives. And I think, early on, when you get students who are making regular money, you've got teenagers, or you've got early adults who are thinking about their money. You might want to think about how can you get them involved in building out some investment opportunities. But thinking about little kids, I know that when I got an allowance, it was just kind of this flat rate you got every day or every week. I got so much dollars, I think, every week. I can't even remember what it was. But the one way I'm trying to help
Dad, this is linear. Give me something exponential.
Right. So how I can help my kids think about compound interest is not giving it a linear scale. Is actually letting them see the power of letting their money compound. So instead of giving them an allowance, it's almost like we've created together a spreadsheet savings account. Whereas if they put in a certain amount of, whatever dollar amount they put into their spreadsheet savings account, we can see that we're going to give them, and I think what we set up and I gave them, now I'm going to give them a good interest rate. I'm allowing their money to grow at 12% per year compounded monthly. And so my daughter, who's, she gave me all the birthday money she had over the last couple of years. She's like, here's $500, Dad, put this in my compound interest savings account. And so we put it in a spreadsheet, and we're just showing that every day her money increases in value by just having it in there. So she can see day by day that money grows by a small percentage or a small dollar amount. That's the key, that it grows by a dollar amount. And that on the spreadsheet, she can see that she didn't do anything today, other than let her money grow. And it changes because the next day it's a little bit more, and the next day it's a little bit more, and the next day it's a little bit more. And after the month it's over, she earned 1% on her money if she let it be in there for that full amount. And it grew by just allowing it in there. So she's seeing the power of investing, but also like passive income in a way that she's saying, look, as long as I just keep my money in there, I'm earning money without having to go to work. And I think letting them understand that after that money sitting in there for a year, she's going to earn, it doesn't seem like a lot when you compare it to like maybe what other kids' allowances are, but she's really right now excited to like have this money grow without her doing anything about it. So now every time she gets money, she's like, Dad, can I put some money into my compound interest savings account? And then it's like, I just take it and we add it to the spreadsheet, and I'm going to pay her that. So it's like, I'm paying her a super cheap allowance, but she's seeing the power of this compound interest grow.
And I'm just showing here for those who are watching on YouTube, I just sort of put together again in the spreadsheet your 1% per month, because 12% per year. So using numbers that are friendly, this is sort of something we've learned in math classes. Like, if you want students to recognize patterns, you need to use numbers that are friendly enough where the pattern is recognizable, right? Where it becomes obvious. So, if she just takes that $500 and leaves it and doesn't touch it and doesn't add anything extra to it, and you just let that 12% per year accumulate, basically over 10 months. So if we get all the way to and if it's 1% per month, this is the cool part about compound interest. The more often you compound it, so taking that 12%, instead of waiting all the way to the end of the year to get 12% all at once, if she gets this 12% in 1% chunks every year, it's like it starts to compound on that. That's the beauty of this, right? It's like the more often you can compound, the better. Now, think about this from a debt perspective. So some of us have mortgages or car payments or whatever. Guess what? The banks know how this works as well. And they know that we're not great at picking up on these patterns, but they compound it either monthly. Sometimes they do it even, semi-annually, but it's very rarely compounded annually because they know they'll make more money off of you by compounding the interest more often. So this is something that, again, like most adults aren't aware of. So like by the end of year one, if she does nothing and we just compound this thing 1% per month, she'll have like $63 of extra money at the end. Now you can only imagine, like, if we actually change this a little bit, and let's say every month she's earning an extra, like, I don't know, what would it be, John? Like, is she earning like a weekly allowance or something, or like for doing chores? Is it like $10 a week or something, or how does that work?
So that brings us to kind of the second piece of some, a way you can kind of bring this, into your kids' lives. Like you could give them that linear allowance, and then they can put it in there. That's everyone is up to your discretion. One thing that my dad did that I always thought was very useful, which helped me, I think, understand the cost of things and thinking about how much time that you're putting in, like almost like opportunity cost. Kyle, you mentioned this at the beginning, that you're thinking a lot more about, if you buy this thing, how many hours did I have to work for it to get that thing? And I think I want my kids to also experience that. My dad helped me experience that as well. Whereas he didn't pay me an allowance, he said, I will match whatever money you go and make, and I will match it, which helped me, I think, understand that I needed to generate my own money. I needed to go out and figure out, how do I earn money? Like, I think I searched for ways. Like I tried to find I think I had one of those small paper routes for a while. I would go to people's door and shovel their driveways, because I know that if I earned $10 shoveling a driveway, my dad was also going to pay me $10 for doing that. So there's lots of kind of different ways you can encourage your students to think the value of money. But when we do that, we help them understand, like help me understand, that if I wanted to buy that CD at Music World, I knew that it was going to cost, paying for the $18 CD, I needed to work like 2 driveways to pay for that. And it was like, was that worth it? I think that part for us is super important in helping our own kids understand the value of money. Like I know my girls, they referee soccer in the summertime, which helps kind of pad that account that they can put money into. So I know that my daughter Olivia had put, her money from her birthday money or whatever, but she also put her referee money into that compound interest savings account. They babysit, they make money babysitting. So it's how can they understand that every dollar they make costs them time in their lifetime. And if I spend it here, that means I can't spend it over here on this. And it also means I'm going to have to spend more time to replenish that dollar amount I spend, which is an opportunity cost. If I spend it here, I'm not spending it over here. And I have to work harder to make up that cost. So those are great things that we have to help our students understand the value of money, because I think we all can understand, and all listeners, when your kids are young, they might spend, money willy-nilly because they just still don't understand that there is a cost here to your life, not only in just this money, because we started this podcast with kids think it's so abstract. I remember just a small story. One of my younger daughters, I think she dropped a dime on the ground, and we were in the store, and I was like, "Oh, grab the dime." She's like, "It's just a dime, Dad." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, we have failed you as someone who is valuing the money." It's like, yeah, it's a dime. You need to pick that up because it's a value that you are going to lose.
It's a compound
forever.
interest.
Oh my gosh. I was so like, what do you mean it's just a dime? You do not understand yet the value of money. And I think we've all kind of gone through stories like that where our kids just like, toss things away, and you're like, wait a minute, there was value here that we used. So I think a big idea here is, how do we help our students understand the value of compound interest, but also how do we help them understand that there's opportunity cost and the value of money.
I love it. I love it. And, for those who were watching, you saw me playing with that spreadsheet, and I just assume, let's say you were, I don't know if it was Olivia that you were doing the 12% with, or if it's all three daughters, but let's say they were getting $10 a week. And, I just kind of rounded it to about like a $40 extra a month and getting the 12% interest. Like that's where you get the double whammy, right? Like, so
huge.
Her account blew up to $1,075 and change. When in reality, if you like kind of do the math on that, it's like she only earned like a little over $400 more, but like that account has grown significantly because of it. And it wasn't just 12%. It was more than 12% because you were compounding monthly. And this is something that's really, really helpful. Now, I want to roll back for a second to share. Your daughters are a little bit older than my children. So, my oldest is 10. Your twins are 12, right?
Yeah, my youngest are 12.
So they're a little bit further along this journey, and you've been doing this with them, I would say, in more recent years. For my kids, I'm going to say, like with younger kids, you want to make it as concrete as possible. For those who, know Jon and I from the math world, we have this, passion for helping students to really understand and build sort of this relationship with mathematics, which often starts concretely. So rather than using a spreadsheet with younger children, I might recommend like the jar method, where kids are seeing the bills going in. And if there's a lot of change in there, that's fine too. But we do this process not only to help them with counting, but like we have them sort of convert their change into groups of $5s and $10 and $20 and $50, and I'll get the bills, and it's a bit of a pain in the butt because I have to have like bills on hand, but it's like, and I'll let them exchange the change for bills so that they see these bills. It's great. But then my sort of approach, and I'm not going to recommend this, like you will go bankrupt if you do this, and I'll tell you why in a second. But what I do with them is to encourage them from spending. We have like a spend jar and we have a save jar. And, we talk about like, just because it's in the spend jar doesn't mean like to deplete it. It just means like, that's the money that you can spend from. And then basically what we do is we pool this money together, and each month they count it. So there's a benefit there. But then the second thing we do is we say, for every $20 that you have in there, I will give you $1 in interest. Now, that even at that, like, it doesn't sound like
Mhm.
a lot, like it's $1. It's not that much, but it actually, if you really think of what that is, this 20-to-1 ratio, you know, so we got an excuse to talk about ratios. We also get to sort of extrapolate and say, well, like, how many dollars per $100 would that be? So they get to make their pile of, you know, 5 20s. That's $100. And they're like, oh, that's $5. Oh, okay. What's that as a percent? That's 5%. I'm giving my kids 5% per month. Okay. So John, you cheapo, you're only giving 1% a month. I'm giving 5% per month. But now my kids are younger, so they have less capital to start with. So their working capital is lower. And so therefore it's like, I need the reward to be higher for them to see the benefit. I want them to see and feel the benefit quickly. Like just recently, the kids, you know, we had, the holidays happen, and, you know, we celebrate, and family, you know, gets them gifts oftentimes of money. And we went through, and it was like the amount of interest I had to pay to my children. Like, it actually made me start rethinking, like, maybe it's time we shift
5% per month. Such steep.
But the reality, though, is like, my son is like me, and he's a hoarder of money. And my daughter's the opposite. She's more like, you know, she wants to go and spend things and, you know, live her life to the fullest, FOMO, all those things, whatever. But he has more money than her now, and he's 2 years younger. So when he gets his interest payment, it hurts, because it's like, not only does he have more money saved than Talia, but his interest payment is higher than hers now too. So it's like, he is going to run away with it. It's like a great example of like how the rich get richer. It's not because they're evil people. It's because they're compounding at a higher rate, right? Like, even if all other things are equal, it's like, I have more money to make more money with. And that is such an opportunity for kids to at least understand the inner workings. Not that it's a realistic scenario. Like, you can't expect that's going to happen in the real world, right, Matt? With doubling your penny every day, it's not going to happen.
Right.
But it's like, to get the concept of it and how important it is to position yourself in a way that it goes, well, wait a second. Like, what has spending all that extra money done for you? It gave you fleeting happiness, right? It gave you like a sense of, you know, excitement maybe in the moment. But most of those things, like, could you even go back and, you know, you ask the kids, like, what did you spend the money on? Right. And like, most of the time they can't even name it unless it's like something big and significant. Most of it's just junk. And it's like, the sooner we can sort of make this change and help them to see that there are certain things that aren't worth spending on. And sometimes there are certain things, like going out for dinner is technically a waste of money, but we still do it as a family because we value that time together. So it's like helping them to sort of navigate that land and sort of find that balance, right? Like, that you don't want to never spend money. You don't want to become Ebenezer Scrooge, Kyle. That's me. Unfortunately, I'm still learning that lesson, but you do want them to sort of at least have some sort of critical thinking around the money that they're spending. And when they say yes to spending on something, they're saying no to something else. So if I say yes to buying assets that grow, I am saying no to junk, but I'm saying yes to earning money. If I go the other way around, if I say yes to buying junk, I'm saying no to potentially earning more money, which I could use some of that money to buy the junk. Like, if I just spent my interest, that's not a bad place to be either. So there's lots of lessons that can be learned from engaging in this type of work.
Matt, you're up. Sorry, guys. I didn't.
That's all right. We got to pause here. Ready?
Yeah, we'll pause there. Do you just want me to introduce kind of big ideas then to wrap?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so. I think we give a couple activities. Maybe, Matt, what you can do is maybe reflect on what we just chatted about and sort of like how that might impact or influence like where your girls are now. And then, and then we can start wrapping.
Okay. All right. So as we wrap this episode, really given me some pause to consider both some super practical ways to introduce some concepts to my kids that might be the equivalent of the concepts about real estate investing that I've gotten excited about. You know, I love the JAR method, Kyle. My kids are a little bit younger. I can see that's so concrete for them, and this power of compound interest, I think is going to be fascinating to them. And I think, you know, my big takeaway though is that we want to pair these practical ideas with the right mindset through which to view money and the reasons for making it. You know, I think for us as adults, and as I said, I had this big transformation as an adult myself. You know, I think we need to unpack our assumptions and our beliefs about money and wealth, you know, and what that's meant for us, and be really diligent in that. And I want to suggest a new definition for wealth, because it's not about just the endless pursuit of more money. Like, I think that's when we go down maybe a bad path, and we hear about the unhappy millionaires or unhappy billionaires. It's not just about more for the purpose of more. I think that, you know, the definition of wealth is perhaps being able to afford the experiences and the things required to fully experience our best, most authentic life. And yes, we all need to start with that practical level of financial security. And that's, you know, speaking to our audience, that's why so many of us got into teaching, because it was safe, it was secure. And I think that's where it starts. But what we're trying to help people do here is shift from that to wealth building. That's really our goal. And that's really, I think, our mission here. And it's the wealth building that helps you lead your most authentic life. And what I mean by that is freedom. It's the freedom to choose how to spend your days. It's the freedom of not having to worry about, you know, your bank account balance and the bills you have coming in. It's the freedom of believing that you are potentially leaving some generational wealth to your kids to help them get a start in life, maybe that you didn't have or that you'd like them to have. And so that's the way that I want to view wealth. You know, it's money is a neutral thing. We are the ones who put meaning and definition on what money means. And I think that culturally we're seeing it in the wrong way. And so I want to fight to redefine what wealth means. And whatever that freedom is, whatever it looks like to you, is totally and completely up to you. I'm not going to make any assumptions or judgments about that, but I know that building wealth can help you achieve and find that freedom.
Awesome, Matt. I think that's a great kind of leave behind takeaway message for our listeners. And just to add to that, my takeaway is to help achieve that, right, with our own kids and with the students that we teach. One way that we want to help them achieve that mindset and thinking about their money use and how they view money is, how can we, you know, bring in the power of compound interest, and also how can we teach students about the opportunity costs of money. We gave some examples, some practical ways we do that with our own kids, and the way we do that in the classroom, which I think will help change their views of money and how they've viewed money in the past. And I know that I want to change that for my kids, so that when they're older, they're seeing money the way and their life the way you're describing here, Matt, which is amazing. So Kyle, what's your big takeaway so far or here in this episode?
Yeah, I just love this idea of like every decision that you make with money, it's like, it's really just one of two things. It's like either going to help you earn more, or it's going to help someone else earn more. And sometimes, right, you can't always spend your money on things that make you earn money. Like there's
right.
decisions, there's times, there's things that you have to do. But if we're thinking about those things, it can help us make better choices about how we use this tool we know as money. And that can really, again, coming all the way back to Matt's mindset piece and sort of this idea of like happiness, like it can help us structure and frame ourselves and put ourselves in a position where we can maximize that level of happiness, or our chances of being happier more often than if we put ourselves in a position where we're not considering those things, and you just sort of end up where you end up. So hopefully this has been helpful for everyone. My friends, if by chance this episode, or maybe any other episode, has been beneficial to you, we really want to encourage you to hit that subscribe button, hit us with a rating and review, and share it with someone. Because guess what? If you're listening to it, if you find it valuable, there's got to be someone else out there who will find it valuable too. So do us that huge favor. That's all we ask from you. And we can't help but thank all of the people who are reaching out. There are so many people reaching out to each of us through DMs, through text messages, even of people in our lives that have found this podcast and said, wow, nice show. We're really loving doing it. And all of that support is giving us the fuel to get up early on a Sunday morning, just like right now, and to do this work here, because we're passionate about it. And we want to see more people out there feel comfortable and confident with their investing decisions.
Awesome stuff. And you can share out or reach us over at Invested Teacher on all social media, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can message us. You can reach out to us. Also, you can find all links to any resources, activities, support ideas that we mentioned here on this episode over at our website in the show notes page at investedteacher.com/episode 8. Again, that's investedteacher.com/episode 8.
And we've got our wealth building blueprint available to share with you over at investedteacher.com/blueprint. That's where we break down and introduce some of these big ideas on your path to building wealth. All right, invested students, class dismissed.
All right, my friends, math moment makers, and now I hope some of you would consider yourselves invested students, as we like to call the listeners of the Invested Teacher podcast. We hope you found that helpful, not only for your students that you teach, but maybe you have some children at home or other people in your lives that you want to help along their journey. Keeping in mind, as Jon had mentioned, we are still full throttle, make math moments all day long, all day strong. But there's been something that we've been doing as well in the background, which is trying to learn more about financial literacy for ourselves, for our families, and for our future generations. And this is something that I think a lot of people, might be curious of. Maybe they're scared of. And really, the purpose of that podcast is to invite more people to the table, just like we want to invite more people to the mathematics table, to the conversation around mathematics. There are so many people that look at investing, finances, budgeting, all of those ideas. They look at it as something that is fearful, that only some people can do. I'm not into budgeting or finances, is what people say, or I'm no good at that. We want to help more people feel confident and really be just feeling like they have a little bit more control or understanding about their own finances, so that you can ensure that your finances in the future are under control. So head on over to Invested Teacher and subscribe there, rate and review. You don't know how valuable that would be in order to help us share that message. The Math Moment Maker community has been amazing over the years, helping by sharing with friends, families, other educators for this podcast. We're asking you a small favor to do the same. And guess what? There are more people in your lives that the Invested Teacher podcast might be a match for, because they don't have to be a math teacher to really find value there. They really just have to be people who want to learn a little bit more about investing and getting their financial future under control.
If you are looking for those links to investedteacher.com or any of the links we mentioned in this episode, you can head on over to this podcast's show notes page, which is makemathmoments.com/episode 220. Again, that's makemathmoments.com/episode 220. And then you will find all the resources, all the necessary links for you to subscribe to the podcast, to get our blueprint for wealth building, and to kind of get hooked up if you are wanting to learn more about becoming an invested student. So head on over to those links there, and you'll get started.
Awesome. My friends, we are so appreciative of your support, and we look forward to our next episode of the Making Math Moments That Matter podcast with you. Until next time, I'm Kyle Pierce.
And I'm Jon Orr.
High fives for us.
And high five for you.
A reminder that this content of this episode is for informational purposes only. You should not construe any such information or other material as legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice.